I think the bigger questions here are Notre Dame and Miami, being the head-to-head, and I think the overall question to ask here is, do you value head-to-head matchups, whether it's beginning of the season or I guess in this case at the beginning of the season, or do you value what team is better today on paper? Because obviously Notre Dame lost those 2 games early in the season, then they won 10 straight. You can argue whether those teams, I'm going to argue that, whether the teams were worth a crap or not. Miami played a conference schedule, beat Notre Dame non-conference at the beginning of the year, week 1, very tough environment. Yes, they had 2 non-ranked losses. They only have 1 ranked win, I believe, something crazy like that. You look at the better team now, it could be, in some eyes, Notre Dame. But you can also say, well, Miami's been the same team all year. So how do you look at that when you evaluate Notre Dame and Miami?
It's hard to say because obviously Notre Dame has had, I guess, quote unquote, better losses than Miami has. Miami obviously had a really rough game against Louisville and then a really rough game against SMU, where the SMU game looked like an overtime. They just kind of like gave up because
Yeah.
obviously Peck threw that interception. That really just put a damper in their whole mood. Whereas Notre Dame, even though have gone on a 10-0 run, who they played? I mean, they played Navy. They beat Syracuse by like 60. They beat Stanford last week by like 40. I mean, and then their closest matchup after that point was what, Boston College?
Yeah, who's 1-10.
Yeah, exactly my point. And so it's hard for me to really justify Notre Dame having the edge over Miami when Miami has technically played teams with better records. Even though they're not ranked, they're better records. And I know their losses are worse, but technically the Pitt win obviously really helped them over the edge of that because that's their only, I mean, that might be their only ranked win, but it's a more of a ranked win over freaking Notre Dame. Well, actually, Notre Dame also played Pitt, so never mind. They both were ranked at that point. So technically, they both had the same win that are big, but in a technicality, Miami wins that head to head.
They beat Florida. They beat Florida State. And then at the end of the year, they win their matchup versus Pittsburgh. And so these teams that others lost to, they took the loss to Louis. It's really residing around what Carson Beck does within the game. And I know that's cliche to say because it does all revolve around the quarterback, but I'm talking about their loss. Their loss is accumulated when Carson Beck was playing like Flat Stanley, super flat, super unathletic, making stupid decisions. Like, dude, the Louisville game was a nightmare Friday night, throwing 4 interceptions. And now looking at it, Louisville's 7-5. Excuse me. And SMU on the road, making those poor decisions in the red zone to win in the football game. Like, that's the only time Miami has lost a football game. And they played some similar opponents to Notre Dame, and that's because Notre Dame made an agreement with NBC to kind of partner with the ACC scheduling when they're picking their Power 4 teams. They just don't pick any of the good ones, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's just fine.
It's Notre Dame.
It's just Notre Dame. Those who bless Notre Dame will be blessed. So I had to wear like a little piece in the back of their head with a Notre Dame logo on it. Personally, I don't know if this is a shadow the script statement. Don't put either of them in the playoffs.
Whoa.
Problem solved.
Instead?
You put a guy like BYU or Vanderbilt in. Because in my opinion, the ACC's kind of been on the way out. And yeah, Miami's had a good season. And I feel for you guys. The Hurricanes, I feel for you guys. You got me like a hurricane. Yeah, I get it. But you guys and the ACC, you guys got screwed last year with Cam Ward. Sorry. You guys got screwed last year with Cam Ward. You might get screwed with my take. You might get screwed this year with Carson Beck. But if we're going to have this whole debacle with, Notre Dame, Miami, the head-to-head, should it matter? Scrap them both. Get them out. And put Vanderbilt in, who, what are you going to argue there? They've won some powerful games. They've won versus Tennessee. I know they lost versus Texas, but they made it close at the end. Sure, you can make that case. They've beaten LSU. They've beaten these other guys. And so they played an SEC schedule. BYU's in the Big 12 championship. The Big 12 has looked pretty good this year with 3 or 4 teams. There's a couple 9-3 teams along there as well. Like, BYU's kind of been screwed in the past. Like, is it their turn? And so I look at it that way. It's like if we're gonna bicker and fight about Notre Dame and Miami, you might as well just scrap the both of them. Say that Texas doesn't get in with 3 losses, and you throw Vanderbilt and Vanderbilt and BYU in there with the G5s and the ACC winner or whatever you want to do. So I don't know, but I don't think it's fair. There's going to be a big issue whether you put, let's say you just put Notre Dame in, you leave Miami out. That's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You put Miami in, you leave Notre Dame out. That's a problem. Either way, you're going to make the wrong decision. So why not make the right decision and just doing away with both? And I know that sucks, but your rules have got to change then. That's another example where I'm saying there's got to be a drastic over-the-top occurrence to get this problem fixed. Maybe that's the way to do it.